I did have to call up my good buddy, Coach Lance Reisland, because as a coach, you're put in some precarious situations. This is a tough one for Todd Monken. What do you think is going through his head right now, Coach?
Well, good morning to you. Happy Sunday. Yeah, the Browns drama never ceases to amaze me. I will say this. The first thing that has to happen as a coach, and I know Todd Monken is thinking this way, is you cannot make emotional decisions, right? Anything in life, but if we're talking about this specifically, you don't want to judge everything that happened yesterday. You don't want to make all your decisions based on yesterday. Now, it's not easy. It's not easy to have pressure from the outside kind of dictate what you do. But I will say this, as a football program, whatever level you're at nowadays, especially in Northeast Ohio, the hours and hours and hours and hours that you spend as a staff and as a organization getting your team ready to go, you have to go back to that and whatever that is. So the evaluation has to be of the entire product, all summer, all spring. Now, if it's yesterday, if you're emotional, Shedeur Sanders played really well yesterday. He was 9 for 11. But more important than the accuracy, I thought his footwork was really good. I thought he got him in and out of the huddle very good. I also thought that Deshaun played very poorly in the third quarter. So, again, the emotion tells you we got to go with the young guy right now. He's the best. And yesterday he was. And if that's a culmination of what the coaches think all summer, then you go with that. However, you want that decision to be theirs, and you want that decision done with multiple people at the table. Todd Monken makes the final call, but emotions can't be tied into it because if you get the emotions tied into it and you're in the right now, the impulse tells you to start Shedeur Sanders. Now, if it's kind of the end product and say, you know what, we love what he's done, which I have as well, then, yeah, you go with him, and that's your decision. But you don't want to be impulsive based on yesterday. That would be my call for Todd Monken right now.
So how, when you were watching the post-game press conference, I guess, with Deshaun, what were you taking away from that?
Well, I was taking away that I wish he wouldn't have done it, to be honest with you. He played poorly. You want the actions. And for me, if you're saying that people are arguing, Coach, you don't want to say he played terribly. No, he didn't play well yesterday. If you go back and look at my timeline, I'm never super high on when they're really, really good, or I'm super low when they were really, really bad. And yesterday was a bad day for him on the field. And then the press conference kind of gives you, people are saying that it makes the choice easy. Well, you'd hope it still doesn't make the choice easy. I've watched almost every throw during camp, and I think these guys have done a lot better things than people give them credit for. What I was most impressed about Shedeur yesterday was his ability to get out of the huddle with 10, 15, almost 20 seconds on the clock. That's why he looked so poised. So you got to give him a lot of credit for that. That's a step in the right direction. That's one of the things I thought Deshaun was ahead of. Yesterday he did not perform, and he was not ahead in that category. So yesterday was a big step for Shedeur. Whatever step that is, that's based on what Coach Monken and his staff decide. But I will tell you, the press conference, you wish he wouldn't have done it. As a coach, as a former player, again, as I said earlier, that's an emotional, personal thing for him. Whether it be right or wrong, that's not my call to say. And whether people, I don't ever feel it's right to boo, but I've been booed a whole bunch in my life, so I understand that. And for me, I'd rather be booed than somebody say it's okay to not play well. That's just how I feel, and that's how most competitors feel. But it kind of reached a limit, Anthony, where he's just, whether he's right or wrong, and to each his own. But for him, yesterday was it boiled over yesterday. And instead of talking about, giving up too many chunk plays or their inability to do some things or the success of the special teams, you're talking about the quarterback position again. And that's where I want the Browns to get away from. I want them to start focusing on football, which I hope Todd Monken gets them to.
Coach Riz, that sounds like maybe he's a big-time bit in his head. How did you help him get out of his head and stop focusing so much on the reaction of the crowd? He even said yesterday that he feels like he'll just be playing 17 road games, and he'd much rather prefer to play road games because he at least can anticipate that, hey, I know they're not supposed to be cheering for me. So how do you help a player when they're kind of like in their head and worried about so much of that outside noise?
Well, that's a tough one, James. And here's the thing is that those outside opinions are never going to change. People have their opinions, and I've always been a big believer that the reason I don't get offended is because I have opinions as well. And if I have an opinion, someone else is allowed to have theirs as well. Now, as your starting quarterback, you can see it's impactful because when people say he can't do things, physically I've seen him do it. So there has to be a mental aspect that's driving at him. The idea of I'm not going to make a mistake. And when you're trying not to make a mistake as a quarterback, that's when they happen. And that's kind of where he's at now. And when people say it's a mental game, this is what they're talking about. You can see the emotion on his face, and you can see how hurt he was. Now, life's tough, and as my dad used to say, no one cares when I'm upset. Or, for me, a lot of people thrive in that situation where people are down on you, and your job is to either prove them right or prove them wrong. And right now, he's letting the outside forces affect his ability. And for me, that's much more impactful if he's the starter than his physical tools. With the amount of weapons they have now, I think he could have some success, but he's going to have some failure as well. And his ability to handle that failure right now doesn't seem to be very good. Obviously people are very impatient with his play. So that would be more of why I think Shedeur maybe has pushed himself equal or ahead, is because Shedeur doesn't seem to have that impact on him right now. So because when Shedeur plays, there's going to be lots of highs and lots of lows as well. And you got to be able to handle the lows as well as you handle the highs when you're a starting quarterback at any level of football.
So do you think with how Shedeur played versus how Deshaun played yesterday, and then you factor in the post game, is it enough to make Todd Monken feel comfortable in naming him the starting quarterback? I mean, we're at a time crunch here. Like, the third preseason game is a couple of days away now.
Well, I would say this, Anthony. I would say if it got to the point, so let's say you're studying for a test all spring and summer, and that was the final test, then I say yes. When people, the question was, and I had multiple people kind of quote what I said when I said if it was based on yesterday only, yeah, that's an easy decision. Shedeur played really well, and he's improved on things that he was struggling with. But I don't know what's going on in the meetings. I don't know what's going on in the film room. I don't know what's going on in operation. I don't know, people have downplayed operation. That's a real thing in this Monken offense. You got to get him into the right play. Well, I thought Shedeur did that very well yesterday. He looked very poised. So were they looking for that? I would hope the decision is made that Shedeur has improved and not Watson is just playing terrible. Because yesterday he played poorly, and then the idea of, well, we got to go with Shedeur. Deshaun played poorly. Well, there's a whole body of work behind the scenes that we don't know about. And, some of the days where people say Deshaun played terribly, I disagree vehemently on that. Now, there's been some terrible throws, no question, but there's been some really good throws and some really good things he's doing getting this offense into the right play. Yesterday wasn't a good day, and that's just the reality of it. So for me, if the decision is made on Shedeur, I would hope it's made because the body of work, including yesterday, which was a very, very good day for him in the first half.
Would you feel comfortable overall, naming Shedeur the starter? Because, guys have good and bad days. We saw it all throughout training. You see it at training camp every day. It's a good Shedeur day. It's a bad Deshaun day, whatever it is. But, if you were to go in with Shedeur as your starter right now, do you feel comfortable with that?
Well, I would say this, because it's a team game, do I feel that Shedeur or Deshaun, but we'll just stay with Shedeur. Do I think he's a quarterback you can win because of right now? I do not. But I do think he's a quarterback you can win with. And you saw it yesterday. So protecting the football is key. You saw the interception for Deshaun. Very next play, they get a bomb for a touchdown. So the idea of flipping the field, making sure you're getting the team into the right run play. When you get out of the huddle, people have laughed at me because of operation. But when you're in this style offense, you can get your team out of bad plays. So a lot of times in this offense, and you heard Todd Monken say it in the preseason, some quarterbacks don't want that smoke. And what that means is rarely should you run or throw into a bad look in this offense. But you got to understand completely what's going on, and you have to make sure that you understand your fronts and your coverages and your blitzes and changing protection and changing a run and getting into a brand new play. We don't know any of that. Now, if he's done that at a high level, yes, then I would feel comfortable because he's always thrown. I've said this before, I think he's been more consistent than Deshaun. I don't think he's had the highs and lows as Deshaun throughout camp. One thing I thought Deshaun was doing a much better job of is getting them into the right play and not being frantic at the line of scrimmage. Well, Shedeur did that very well yesterday, and if he checks all those boxes for Coach Monken. Now, for me, I'm always going to protect the coach, and if this is a coach's decision and he makes the decision that he thinks Shedeur gives them the best chance to win in Jacksonville, then I'm all for it. Yes. Besides that, if it can't be because one guy's playing, the other guy's being sabotaged. I think they both have gotten to the point where they can given him enough of a look, and then you trust the guy you hired. That's why you hire these guys. So Yes, for me, it looked like he was in pretty much control. How much were they running yesterday? What was the defenses they were seeing? I'm just now starting my all 22. Whatever it was yesterday, the film always tells you don't usually do as well as you do, and you usually don't do as bad as you do. But I thought, watching it on TV yesterday, he had a great first half, and the young man needs to get some credit for the good things he did yesterday. And that first half was a good half of football by a guy who is trying to be the starting quarterback. So give him some credit, and if that was got him over the top, great. Go win in Jacksonville. That's the goal.
All right, Lance, I said only 10 minutes. You've given more than enough of your time. I know you've been working your ass off recently, so go rest that voice up, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me on. If you need anything, let me know, and I'm sure we'll talk soon, my friend.
I'm sure we will. Thank you so much, Coach Riz. All right, that was Lance Reisland, Cleveland.com, 92.3 The Fan.